This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 861, Christmas Crits, RuneScape's 2021 PVM meta. Cryptbloom armor, tier 90 tank armor.
Tier 90 tank armor. It's accessible to the people who want to buy their gear instead of doing raids. Raids was the only other tier 90 tank armor available in the game. I guess other than Elder Rune, but Elder Rune isn't augmentable, so
yeah,
is much less useful.
Can't really compare that.
Cryptbloom, yeah, it's got a passive that several passives. One of them is useful in the situations that I'm going to say include only a couple of raid bosses and AOD, maybe one or two other places where you're doing group PVM in a large group, maybe large group Solak. And people, no. Yeah, I don't think so either. So, you wouldn't want to sacrifice somebody being in power armor for this. The biggest thing here is it has damage reduction on it attached to it. If you're using earth spells, that damage reduction goes up a little bit. Wearing 2 or 3 pieces, you get up to, damage reduction specifically against melee and to a less degree against magic. Very useful for a lot of bosses. A lot of bosses attack primarily with those 2 combat styles, especially for the base tank role. Most bosses, in fact, I don't know. There's only one attacks with range. Anyways,
well, Yaka attacks with range if you're not MD.
Yeah, so
but you can just wear this and go MD, and
yeah, you can MD being melee distance. This offers a very large damage reduction, and that stacks with a lot of damage reduction Magic already has, including things like we mentioned earlier with Animate Dead, which reduces 75% of hits up to a certain cap. But that applies after all other damage reduction has been done. So you add in somebody is using earth spells on the boss, or you are using earth spells on the boss, you get 5% less damage from the spell for most earth spells. You stack that on top of this, you stack that with perks, you stack that on top of what other damage reduction? Like potentially Spirit Shield. I mean, Emerald Aurora or Smoke. I think it's Smoke, right? It's the Earth type ancient magics. Both of them do a 5% damage reduction. We're going to assume that there's not going to be somebody using a different one of them. It's just you are using an Earth spell, which is 5%. So you stack all these things together. You can reach on Magic without using a defensive ability above 95% damage reduction, which is to say before basic abilities. For it.
Yeah, Staff of Light spec.
Staff of Light spec decreases damage by 50% against melee, costs 100%, can be used once a minute, lasts a minute, can be constantly running. And can be used with any weapon equipped if it's in an EOF. So if you stack all these things together, you can pass 95% damage reduction on Magic without defensives, which is ridiculous. Once you get hit by damage larger than 8,000 damage in a single hit, you finally pass the Animate Dead cap, and you cannot reduce damage by that much when you're getting hit by over 8,000 damage, which is specifically for base tanking a few places and like the Calphite King, and kind of nowhere else. So you can do really massive damage reduction on Magic with these things without even necessarily using a shield. Cryptbloom is just like an extension of here's some additional.
Did we ever figure out what the rationale behind them doing this was?
I think they were looking for rewards to give us. I believe Sponge mentioned it on a couple of streams. He was just looking to design spells, and this spell seemed really cool. That we can reduce damage from stuff. And then he was designing armor, and he's like, okay, well, this Cryptbloom seems cool. And at that point, we'd only just rebuffed or re-added the spec to the Fractured Staff of Armadillo, and people were just the design for this armor went in prior to people realizing that it was disgustingly broken. Staff was. And so the armor got released in addition. So Magic continues to get buffs. Cryptbloom is the tank armor. I think there's some situations where you would still want pieces of the Raid's armor to get defensive resets, but if you're just camping for base tanking or something.
Kind of, but the damage reduction is so good, you basically don't even need to use defensives anywhere.
Yeah, and you can still wear 2-piece Cryptbloom and 3-piece Octo and just bring again, you don't because you want to be wearing Cinderbanes or other things. Most people don't wear more than 3-piece tank armor for anything. Your Raid's armor is effectively a switch now to get repeats if you're on Magic and have 2 bill to spare on this Cryptbloom. Which I think is dropping now because they just changed the drop rates on it, but time will tell on that one.
Increased slightly. We don't know what slightly is, of course.
Yeah,
they
still,
did say
the helm top and legs are still a ton.
Yeah, and I saw a note on Reddit from AJ Mod saying that they're planning to release Elder God Wars drop rates this week, which they're out of the office after this week, so maybe not. I don't know. We will be getting drop rates soon. Now that they seem to, I'm thinking that the patch notes this week were probably the final adjustments for them.
Yeah.
So we'll be getting rates pretty soon, so we'll be able to see what that looks like. Regardless, Cryptbloom's really good. You can get really high damage reduction on Magic with this. Magic is our tank class now. It's great, even just to use like other armors, other just tank armor, like sports armor, whatever it is, to just learn content because you just don't need to worry about taking damage unless you're being hit by very large numbers. So, Bloom is busted damage reduction, allows you to do some pretty silly things, but just not take damage for them. You can ignore a lot of boss mechanics, whatever.
You can find full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or just enjoyed it, like and subscribe, or leave a comment.